tonight at 7 o'clock and make a strong entrance to the other building. So thank you for working through that. And I know there's a lot going on this evening, as there are most evenings, but thank you for your patience with that. I know it's a lot. I want to introduce our guests so that we don't take any extra time and we can use our time really well. We are very, very pleased to welcome you to the Spring 2024 Hearn Innovators Series in Christian Music. It's made possible by an endowment created through the generosity of Billy Ray Hearn, who's a Baylor graduate from the 1950s. This series is designed to bring innovators in the field of Christian music to Baylor's campus and facilitate close interaction between the guest presenter and Baylor students. And tonight we welcome Laura Story to that. Some of you wonder oftentimes why it is we have people who are performance artists and all these things, but we don't do concerts. And that's part of the whole series, is that this is about learning and about engaging personally and up front, and we want that to be the case with the students and the guests. Laura Story is an individual whose life and diverse work beautifully intertwine the realms of faith, music, and literature. She's a Bible teacher, worship leader, singer, songwriter, and a best-selling author. Her musical compositions boast Grammys, Billboard Music Awards, and other award-winning songs, including the iconic Blessings, Mighty to Save, and Chris Tomlin's Indescribable. Beyond her musical and literary accomplishments, Laura holds a master's degree in theological studies and a doctorate in worship studies. Since 2005, she has served as a worship leader at Perimeter Church in Atlanta, where her passion for worship and teaching has flourished. Laura finds great joy in her roles as a wife to Martin and devoted mother to Josie, Dan, Griffin, and Timothy. And I'm going to add one word. I've told some of you this through this last year, that Laura was here last summer, and she stepped in and sang beautifully at the closing worship time. And what I said about her is we simply met going into the building, and she said, "Just want me to go at this time?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "I'll fix the microphone, I'll make it work." And she did, and we didn't have to make a big deal of things. And I can't tell you how grateful I was to a person who could actually flow with things and make it work. And I've said to many of you that the most famous people are the ones who know how to get around in the world and just be one of us. And you have had my tremendous respect for being so easy on a very stressful day. And so my admiration went to you in a different way in all this stuff. So thank you for being a real person. We are pleased to welcome artist, author, great woman of faith, and Hearn innovator, Laura Story.
And I don't know if you remember, I don't know if I've ever played Blessings as badly as I did that day with you. You would have thought it was my first time ever playing it. I just hit some clunkers. So maybe that encourages you. It happens to the best of us. No, but it really is such a treat to be here. And the ask in and of itself was very intriguing. It was, come and play some songs, but don't do a concert. Come and share some truths, but you don't actually have to teach. So who knows what's about to happen here? But whatever happens here, I will be done by... So you guys in the black ties need to be out at 7. So I'm going to try to be done by 6:45 so that if anyone has any questions, then we'll do that. How about that? So one of the things I thought, okay, so share about myself, share about maybe some of the things the Lord has taught me. I thought I might take this approach of telling you about kind of the 3 roles that I feel like the Lord has called me to, and that's as a songwriter, as a worshiper, and as a worship leader. So starting off as a songwriter, I did not grow up singing. I did not grow up doing anything up front. I distinctly remember, so I grew up in this big Baptist church in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and I was part of the orchestra. I played string bass. Any string bassers here? Yeah, here we go. And there was another one. I met a string bass chick earlier. Oh, there we go. You gotta raise your hand. You gotta be proud of that. But it was the perfect instrument for a really insecure middle schooler, because I'd be in the very very back of the orchestra, and you're counting 47 measures, and then you play 3 notes, and then you're counting 27 more measures, and just very interesting role. It's not for like the glory hog, it's very, no one even notices you're back there. And so that kind of was what I did as a middle school and high school student, and it never really occurred to me, this idea of being a music minister or a worship leader. First of all, worship leader wasn't even really a term that was part of our vocabulary. We had a music director, and that was a guy who wore a suit and conducted the choir. And I still love going back there, and I love that style of worship. But I didn't own a suit, nor did I know how to conduct a choir. So it never really dawned on me that music ministry was something that I could be called by God to be part of. And so it was when I was, I guess, a sophomore in college. It was when the band Caveman's Call was really big. Y'all remember Caveman's Call? And I got asked by this group of guys who were playing a coffee shop, and they said, "Hey, our bass player can't make it. Do you want to play bass with us at this coffee shop?" And I thought, me from orchestra, I was like, that is by far the coolest thing I've ever been asked to do in my life. I have no idea, apparently I didn't even need my bow. You just kind of pluck along, anyway. But I ended up playing music with them, and that's when I began to write a few songs, and that's when I began to sing a little bit. And it was the Lord taking me kind of from the back of the stage and pushing me towards the front, which I was only comfortable doing it because I felt like it was His work. He was the one kind of doing that. And so what happened next, I began to talk to, I hope this is the kind of thing I'm supposed to be sharing. You can just be like this, if it's not. I began to talk to a record label, because I began to write songs, and this really sweet girl from this record label in Nashville. And so at the time, I'm about to graduate from college, have no idea what I'm going to do next, and had been dating a guy who broke up with me 2 months before graduation. Yes, perfect. And so I'm starting to talk to this record label. They're like, "You should move to Nashville," and so when you sign a record deal, there's the deal memo, and then there's the long form. So the deal memo is like, yes, let's do this. The long form is the one that really counts, and the lawyers are working on it. So I signed this deal memo with this record label, and I go into the studio, and I was working with a guy named Ed Cash, who you guys may know of him from We the Kingdom. But before that, he was just a Young Life leader, and he and I did Young Life together. And then he moved to Nashville and started making records. And so we were working on this. We were 3 songs in, and they had a little bit of some change that was happening at that record label. And I didn't even know what the change was. I just knew that they had called me one day they said, "Hey, before you go to the studio, swing by the label. We'd love for you to meet one of the new guys at the label." And I'm thinking nothing. So I show up. I had gone hiking with some friends that morning, and I'm in my nicest pair of overalls. Okay, haven't showered in days. This is pertinent to the story, I promise you. So I show up to meet with this guy, and he's like, "Wow, so you're the girl that they're thinking about signing?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, tell me what you're doing musically." And I said, "Well, I play guitar for the youth group of the church." He was like, "Oh, okay. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" I was like, "Well, I really like playing guitar at the church for the youth group." And he's like, "Okay, nice to meet you." So I leave, I go to get in the car, I get to the studio, and before we even start tracking, Ed sits down with me and said, "Hey, the guy you just met with," and I'm like, "How did you know about my meeting?" So the guy you just met with is the new president of the label, and he just pulled your deal. And So I guess we're not recording this after all. And I packed my stuff up, packed my guitar up, packed my literally packed it all up and drove home. And it was like one of the hardest doors slamming that I've ever felt in my life. And the reason I share with you that is sometimes we think about the Lord opening doors. And you think about, God, I thank you so much that you opened that door. Well, that was one of those doors that at the time, it did not feel good. But it's one of the closed doors that I truly can say, God, I thank you for closing that door, for slamming that door in my face. Because what ended up happening after that, so I went back home and got involved. So I was in probably 3 days, and I ran into my high school sweetheart's dad at the grocery store. And he was like, so what are you up to? And I was like, absolutely nothing. I'm up to absolutely nothing. I graduated. I have no job. He's like, well, come over to the house. And long story short, I began to date my high school sweetheart again. And within probably 4 months, we ended up getting married. 4 months we ended up getting engaged. And then 5 months later, we got married. And we had known each other, been friends for 10 years. But it was the Monday before the Saturday that we got married. I got a call from Ed, and he said, hey, remember that record we almost made before you didn't have a record deal? I was like, yeah. He said, I'm recording this other guy named Chris Tomlin. He's this worship leader from Texas. Yeah, from Texas A&M. And at the time, he wasn't like, Chris Tomlin. He was just Chris Tomlin. It was his first record. And he said, would you be okay if we just pitch shifted all those tracks from Indescribable and he recorded it? And it was so neat. The work that the Lord had done in my heart at that point, I think I had held on to that deal so tightly that the Lord knew that it wasn't the best thing for me. And I really was at the point when I got that call Monday, right before I'm getting married, getting married, I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Whatever you want. Sure, go for it. But it was neat to see how the Lord, all the things in His timing, all the things, Him not giving me the thing that I so desperately desired, because it wasn't His timing. There was work He still needed to do in me. So that was kind of a long story as my intro story. Sorry about that. So feel free to sing along with this one if you want to. By the way, I'll do this every now and then at concerts, and I'll say, this is a song I wrote, and I'll start singing it, and I've heard someone on the front row go, she didn't write that. That's Chris Tomlin. And I'm like listening, and I'm like, do I stop and say, oh yeah? Like, I'm very immature. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's okay. But anyway, I wrote this. It wasn't Chris Tomlin. And then people will say, they're like, did Chris Tomlin steal that song from you? I'm like, I know it sounds like he snuck into my house at night, like ripped a page from my journal. That's not how it happened at all. It's a lot sweeter than that. Anyway, sorry. Feel free to sing along. From the highest of heights to the depths of the sea, creation revealing your majesty. From the clouds of fall to the fragrance of spring, every creature unique in the song that sings. Well, thanks so much. So that's kind of how I became a songwriter, which is so interesting. Again, never really thought of myself as that, and it's been a sweet way to, in being a songwriter, it's so much about providing resources for the modern church to sing, and I think about how so much of my spiritual formation came from learning about God through the songs that I sang in worship, through the songs that I sang in church. And so it really, it's a big responsibility, probably one of my favorite things the Lord's allowed me to be part of. So I mentioned, the record label that did not work out. So I ended up getting, and then the relationship that did work out. So Martin and I got married. We are celebrating 20 years this May. So it's, really sweet. And he's a wonderful guy. And so it was, I'll never forget, the first time I met up with Chris and Jesse and a lot of their guys. They had been on the road. We met up and did this video together about the song Indescribable with his record label, which I'm trying to remember whether it was the same label that ditched me. I don't think it was. Since then I've kind of worked with all of them, and so they're all nice people. It just was God's timing. Anyway, but I remember meeting up with them. It was probably about 3 months after I got married. All of a sudden I started hearing the song on the radio, which was kind of a cool thing. And then at the very end, I'd hear this. I'm trying to think what key he did it in. And if the radio person didn't cut it off early or talk over it, I was like, hey, I think that's me on the radio. They literally took my track, shifted it up, and then added a ton of electric guitars to it. And I was like, oh, look, I'm on the radio for like half a second. That is my claim to fame. There we go. But what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so Martin and I, we got married, and I remember running into those guys for a video thing, and just how they said, yeah, we've been on the road about 250 dates this year. And I remember thinking, Lord, yes, your timing's perfect. I as a newlywed, I'm so thankful that it was for their season of life to do that, and for me, I got to still be a part of something really exciting. And so it was about around that time that my husband decided to go to graduate school. We were married probably 9 months when we started thinking of praying about graduate school. And we ended up in Atlanta, Georgia for grad school. And at first we were supposed to go to Savannah, Georgia, but and literally all of our boxes said Savannah on them. And then a good friend of ours who worked at a church called Perimeter Church called us and said, hey, you know that they have one of those Savannah schools. They just opened one in downtown Atlanta. Would you guys consider coming here and being part of Perimeter Church? And it was neat that the Lord moved us there, because it was within probably 5 months of us being there. Well, a couple of things happened. First of all, within about 3 months, I started talking. I got a phone call. I was with my mom. We'd gone to the beach for the weekend. I'm sitting on the beach, and I get a call. And he said, my name is James Rieger. I'm with a group called Fair Trade Records, and would you be interested in making a record with us? And I thought, yeah, I've been there, done that. I said, I just got married, so I'm not really interested in jumping on some huge tour that you guys are wanting to do. And he was like, nope, we're not really that kind of group. But I said, okay, well, I just started working at a church about 3 months ago, and so I really like my job. And he said, yeah, that's what we like about you, is that you work in a church. And I said, oh, okay, well then let's talk then. So they had set a date to come and sit down with my husband and I on it. It was a Friday night. They were going to go down from Nashville to take us out to dinner. And the Wednesday before that, my husband went in. He had just been having just kind of lethargic, a little bit forgetful, and had gone in to see a doctor, and they ended up doing a CAT scan and found out that he had a brain tumor. So again, completely different road than what we were expecting to go down. And I remember calling that record label back up and saying, hey, this is what's happened, and clearly, like this, we really need to focus there. And so we'd love to come down anyway just to meet you guys and pray for you. And so they ended up doing that, and then we prepared for surgery. About 5 weeks later, Martin had brain surgery. And we were expecting him to be in the hospital for about 10 days. He ended up being in the hospital for about 3 months. It was a very hard time as he would get better and then he'd get worse, and then he'd get better and get worse. And finally, after 3 months, when Martin was finally discharged, we were so thankful that he was being released, that he was well enough to go home. But I do remember asking the doctor, like, why are you discharging him when he's not completely well yet? And that's when this doctor had to sit me down and talk to me about kind of the new normal that we were going to need to get used to. And Martin lives with a brain injury, lives with a vision deficit and a memory deficit. And there's logistic challenges. You know, we ended up moving forward with having children. There's challenges, you know, him being a father, challenges as a husband, challenges as he has finally kind of gotten to the point where he can work a little bit, but still has a lot of stamina issues with that and a lot of memory issues with work. And I can tell you like a long list of just kind of what it looks like to live with disability. But the reason I bring it up is it's more, as hard as it's been to figure out what life looks like with disability from a logistic level, it's been equally hard to figure it out on a spiritual level. So kind of to go back to this second record label, they reached out to me again a few months after Mark got out of the hospital, and they were saying, you know, have you thought any more about writing some songs and recording some songs, some worship songs? And I remember thinking just how odd of a request it was, because I was at a point in my life where my faith probably was more shaky than it had ever been, where life looked, I don't want to say hopeless. It wasn't that it was hopeless. It was just, it was this open-ended story. And I mentioned the church I grew up in, and it was a wonderful church, but I feel like people would, at our church we do testimony night. Anyone grew up in a church that did testimony night? And like the guy would get up and say, you know, I had really bad gout, and I trusted God with it, and now I'm dancing for Jesus, you know. Or there would be a situation where like, I lost my job, and I trusted Jesus with it, and now I'm the CEO of Google. Like, kind of felt like that's how those stories would always go. And so I think that's partly what we were wrestling with. That we were trusting God with Mark's disability, that Mark was remaining disabled. And it was hard to know, like, what do we do with that? And then here I've been a worship leader at this church at this point for probably 9 months. And so I remember, this will tell you how old I am. Like, how great is our God was like, we're doing it every week, and I'm sitting there thinking, I just don't know how to sing this right now. I mean, you worship leaders, have you ever been in that situation? Like, I just don't know how to sing this right now. And I remember turning to the scriptures and saying, Lord, you're going to have to either redefine my view of worship, or you're going to have to give me a different job. You got to show me how I can worship in the midst of this very broken-looking situation, or you're going to have to find me a different line of work. And the truth is the more I search the scriptures, I actually, I think what I had heard so much of from the scriptures was people worshiping out of this feeling of joy. And that's a beautiful picture in the scripture. But I'm telling you, the scripture is not just full of people worshiping based on feeling. The scriptures are full of people worshiping based on faith. And that was one of the themes that I began to see over and over again. wasn't just that I was able to begin to sing about the goodness of God, about the promises of God, even though I was walking through this hard, kind of open-ended situation that didn't have this tidy bow on it. It wasn't just that I was able to do it. It was that me singing the promises of God was the very thing that was allowing, it was my act of faith. It was my way of stepping forward even in the midst of the pain. It was, I think my Christianity for so long had been God giving me resolution for the problems in my life. Then all of a sudden there were these problems that weren't going away. And I feel like the Lord was beginning to show me more of who He is, more of His purposes, even in the midst of the problems that aren't solved. And I hope that makes sense. And I'm sure that anyone that's walked with the Lord for any amount of time is like, yes, I get it. But this is one of the songs that I wrote in the midst of that confusing time. I'll say one more thing about it. I'm sorry I'm talking so much. I think I'm supposed to be though. I think am I doing it right? Okay. Okay, we're good. One of the things that I realized about being a songwriter is, I think I always, my songwriting heroes were guys like Stephen Curtis Chapman and Amy Grant and Sarah Grove, Nicole Warren. I have so many songwriting heroes. And I think I always thought that they were writing songs about these truths that they'd mastered, that now I would impart them upon the listener. And maybe that is the case with them. As I've gotten to know each of them, I've realized it really, that's not necessarily the role of a songwriter. And for me, especially with this song, like God gave me some words that represented the promises of His Word. And they weren't necessarily the truths that I've mastered as much as the things that would carry me through. The things that God knew I needed to sing night after night. And so this song, Blessings, has been a huge part of my own healing, my own processing, and the song that I always love to get to sing because we're still in the midst of it. We're still in the midst of health issues with my husband. And it's not that people ask me, they'll say, so have you stopped praying for healing? And it's like, no, not at all. And any of you that are facing anything hard, it's never that surrender doesn't mean that you stop praying for change. It's that next breath. It's after you've prayed, God, would you heal my husband? The next thing I want to pray is, and in the waiting, will you show me your faithfulness? In the waiting, will you show me how you might use this really hard, broken thing to shine your light? In the waiting, will you show me something new about yourself today? In the waiting, will you show me something new about myself today? So this is the song Blessings. We pray for blessings. We pray for peace. Comfort for family. Protection while we sleep. We pray for healing, for prosperity, and we pray for your mighty hand to ease our suffering. And all the while, you hear each broken need. Yet love is way too much to give us lesser things. What if your blessings come through raindrops? What every promise from your word is not enough. And all the while, you hear each desperate plea. And all that we have faith to believe. What if your blessings come through us? What if your healing comes through tears? And what if 1,000 sleepless nights are what it takes to know you're near? And what if trials of this life are your mercies in disguise? When friends betray us, when darkness seems to win me, the pain reminds this heart that this is not home. It's not home. What if your blessings come through raindrops? What if your healing comes through tears? And what if 1,000 sleepless nights are what it takes to know you're near? And what if my grace is disappointments, or the achings of this life is the revealing of a greater thirst this world can't satisfy? And what if trials of this life, the rain, the storms, the hardest nights, are your mercies in disguise? Well, thank you guys. I better go after here. Thank you guys for you've been so sweet to listen to all my crazy stories. So I'm talking about being a songwriter, I'm talking about being a worshiper, and God teaching me about worship as an act of faith. Let me say a few quick things, and then I'll do one more song, and then we'll do some questions. Let me say a few quick things about being a worship leader. How many of you guys in here, that's part of your degree, whether it's music ministry? I want to see those hands high. There you go. Yeah. So I am Matt. What's my title? Executive Director of Worship. Matt's at our church. Matt is the Director of Worship. Matt, go ahead and put your hand there. Matt is the Director of Worship at our church, and then Abby, who's up there as well. She's in charge of our worship residents. We have a residency program that's pretty awesome. If you were wondering, like I was, what will I do after I graduate from here? We have a wonderful plan for your life. Talk to me or Abby or Matt. But one of the things people always ask me, like, so what is it? What is the role of a worship leader or worship director, whatever you want to kind of call that title? And I'm not sure I could have articulated it when I started at Schroeder almost 19 years ago. But the thing that I've realized about the role, a lot of people think it's leading the songs, it's this or that, it's booking people on Planning Center, and then on Saturday when they've declined, it's whatever your plans were Saturday, you're on your phone at the party trying to find another bass player. Yes, that is a big part of being a worship leader. But I'd say the three big things that I've found to be kind of the most important pieces of that. One is, it is the crafting the service. It is leading God's people in worship. When I say leading, really is more of facilitating opportunities to worship. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the leader of that, even though in some contexts it will look like that. So one would be actually, leading the service. When I say crafting the service, You are the curator of the service. You're the, by you choosing songs, I literally, so before I decided to do this jumbled mess, I was going to do a whole thing on song selection, because that may be the thing I'm most passionate about. If you were to ask someone, what part of the service is the part that focuses on spiritual formation? What part of the worship service? It's a trick question. The answer is all of it. Everything from the architecture of the building to how you welcome people, to how participational your service is. But one of those huge parts is song selection. Again, I grew up in a church where I wish I could tell you that I remembered all the things that the preacher preached about. I honestly didn't, but I never missed one of the big choral anthems. I never missed the truths that God was teaching me about himself and about myself. I am convinced that I learned it through the singing of the songs of the church. So yes, the overseeing the service. Secondly, it's shepherding a community of volunteers. It's one of the things I get to do. And it's not like a means to an end. I think that was a big thing I discovered early on. It's like, okay, so I shepherd this community so that I can get free guitar players and drummers for Sunday morning. No, that is not it. God has allowed me to lead these people on Sunday morning so that I have an opportunity to be part of their lives Monday through Saturday. So that I have an opportunity. So my first, I'm going fast, I promise. My very first year on staff, I was in charge of a band that had some of the best musicians I've ever played with. These guys, one of them was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so I show up as this 27-year-old. I'm like, what could I possibly contribute to this situation? And I'm like the band leader, And the thing that my supervisor at the time, he was able to show me that part of my role was just listening to them, just developing that community. And after spending just a few rehearsals in, I realized that these were individuals that had their entire lives been prized for their gift. They'd been seen as their gift. They made bands because of their gift. They lost gigs because of them playing poorly. And so I saw a whole group of people that were struggling to understand the gospel because everything in their life leading up to that had been about performance. I think that that's when kind of the switch flipped of, discipleship is primary. Leading worship is the thing that we get to do on Sunday. It's almost like the overflow of the work that God is doing in this sweet little team throughout the week. So planning service and overseeing that, shepherding volunteers. And then the third thing that I get to do is develop leaders. And those could be an 80-year-old leader that's always played the organ, and I need her to play the Nord. You know what I mean? Me, an 80-year-old that's wondering, like, how do I fit into this crew? And I get to say, we need you more than you could possibly know. Or that could be that young punk kid that it's like every time I'm trying to talk, he's new and just like, I'm like, you're not getting paid by the note. You're not getting paid at all. It's voluntary. But yeah, developing leaders. And if I miss that, then I miss the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to do one more song. This is a song. I'm going to share one more thing first. Yeah, I can do it. I can do it quickly. One of the things when I was here this summer, I got to talk to the high school students. And as I was kind of praying, like, what do I share with these high school students? What would I have shared with high school me? And the passage that kept coming to mind was John 1, where John the Baptist, his job was to point to Jesus, okay? If Jesus is the point, then John the Baptist is the pointer. So I was trying to talk to them about how that is our role as worship leaders. It's just pointing to Jesus. And that the line that John the Baptist says that has been so impactful for me, he says, I am not the Christ. People are flocking to him, trying, like, or you're the one that we've been waiting for. And he's like, no, I am not the Christ. And I'll never forget, kind of early on in my time as a worship leader, someone talking to me about the implications of that statement. Them saying, that first of all, Laura, you need to realize that you're not the Christ. Like, I'm not the lead singer, and my volunteer base is my background singers. Okay? Someone asked me also a long time ago, like, if I was going to take a picture of my worship ministry, would it be me in the center? Or would I be in the back kind of pushing more people towards the front? So it's this reminder that I am not the Christ. Not the Christ. But the second reminder in that is, hey, great news, guys. I'm not the Christ. I'm not the Christ. I was leading a kind of a time like this with worship leaders, and I said to a group of students, I said, who is the mediator in a worship service? Who is the mediator between the people and God? Okay? And they're like looking at me, I'm sure. I said, it's the Sunday school answer. It's the Sunday school answer. And they're like, Jesus? I said, yes. Jesus is the mediator between the people and God. I wasn't trying to make them feel dumb. I think the reason why it was so confusing is because oftentimes when we're leading worship, we feel like that's our role. Like we have to be the ones making it happen, drumming up the emotion, getting people to sing, getting people to see God and experience Him. But we're not the Christ. And Jesus is the mediator. He is the one that works in people's hearts. He is the one that not only draws people to worship, but the word says that the rocks will cry out. It's like in some ways He doesn't even need us. So let's do one more song. This is a song that some friends of mine we wrote together. And anyone that needs to leave, I know that you guys have your own events. You'll have to find me later to ask me questions. This is a song called "Come Unto Jesus." And it's just a great reminder. Do we have lyrics for this one? Oh, good. Can you guys read that? Is it too far? Good. This is a song that myself and two other worship leaders wrote. Just reminding ourselves that our job is to point to Him. Our job isn't to make something happen in a worship service. And it always starts with us being the first ones to come to Jesus. By the way, I'm playing this in a different key than I normally do. I lost my voice like a week ago. It's barely back. So this might be bad. I'm going to start thinking of something about Baylor. But I just forget how to put it together when I'm here. Alright, let's sing this. Come unto Jesus, all who are weary. Come to the mercy seat, fervently near. Here we go, the heart broken and needy. Come unto Jesus, mighty to hear. Joy of the comfortless, life for the straying, hope of the penitent, peace in our strife. He speaks the comfort, tenderly saying, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Come unto Jesus. to Jesus, rest in His love. Come taste the bread of life broken for sinners. Drink from the cup of His promise made sure. Feast at His table as sons and as daughters. Grace overflowing is yours evermore. Come unto Jesus. Come unto Jesus. Lay down your burdens. He is enough. Come unto Jesus. Rest in His love. Come now and follow me. It's not forsaking. All that was vain counted nothing but a loss. Trade all this world for His kingdom unfailing. Come unto Jesus, take up your cross. Come unto Jesus, take up your cross. His life everlasting, He offers to us. Come unto Jesus, come unto Jesus. Lay down your burdens, He is enough. Come unto Jesus, come unto Jesus. Lay down your burdens, He is enough. Come unto Jesus and rest in His love. Come unto Jesus, rest in His love. All right. Can I have time to, Jason, can I ask some questions? Oh, you have some water for me. Hey, thank you so much. All right, anybody have any questions? Or I just covered it all, didn't I? All kinds of crazy stuff.
Have you learned, let's see, have you learned a lot about, technically, about songwriting from any artists who are not Christians?
Oh, that's a good question.
And if so, who are kind of the leading people along those lines?
Well, I can
You
tell
can
you.
answer the question again about Christians, but
That's great. It's
I'm not
amazing
saying
how
not
hard.
Christians, I'm saying
How much
not
of a
Christian
hard
artists.
is happening with this. This is unbelievable. Are you punking me, Jason? Are Texas water bottles different? Hey, Matt Means, will you come down and help me with this water bottle? No, it's not. I'm sure the water is great. I just literally cannot get the top off of it. Hey, you try it. You try it. You try it. Matt says it's childproof.
You listen to that.
Yeah, that's what it was. I listened to it. Yeah, that's a great question. So I grew up in my house. We had a record player.
Yeah.
Anybody know? I was about to say it's like a CD but bigger, but we don't even have those anymore. And I'll tell you what was the American Graffiti soundtrack was playing in my home, and when that wasn't playing, it was something by the Beatles or something by John Denver. And so I think, how do I say this in a way that's not disparaging towards contemporary Christian worship? It'd be nice to incorporate some of the chords used. I mean, those four that we use are great. They're reliable. Let me answer this question this way. There's a lot that we need to learn from secular music, and not all Christian music is just the four chords. And there's still a sweetness about the simplicity there, because you don't want to be too complicated for congregations not to be able to join in and sing. But yeah, so I've always been kind of a worship songwriter, but singer-songwriter as well. So a lot of mine is a hybrid, and I think it's because of music like the Beatles and John Denver that I grew up on. You're probably married. Like that. Okay, what else? Yes.
I work at a church. I play the piano, I sing, I've got to listen to my team, I've got to look at my church, but I can't do it all at the same time.
That's great.
How can I get better at that? I want to look at people, but I've got to look at my music. It's just a lot.
I know, and I think some of that, sometimes I do all of it if it's something that I'm confident in, but usually I'm not doing all of it. So usually I'm getting other people to, if it's something that I am not as comfortable with on piano, I'm getting someone else to sing the lead.
Okay.
And it really is, I think it's, sometimes we look at these artists that just seem to effortlessly do all of it. But it's not necessarily the picture I think that the Lord wants. I think that He's wanting to show a community leading worship.
Yeah.
I think it's only been within, I don't know, the past, you could probably say better than me, the past 50 or 100 years that we have these solo worship leaders. It's always been ensemble. And so it can even be kind of an ensemble approach to it, even if it's just a very small team. That's what I would say. And then this is the one you don't want to hear. If you're in a setting that needs to be just you, something we started doing a while back. We started videoing services. Oh, it's like the most humbling thing. It's like those little small round mirrors they have in hotels sometimes, you can see every pore in your face. That's really it's like looking at that. When you're videoing yourself and you watch it back and you see, oh man, I am singing about the joy of the Lord and I just look angry. That's one way to get better, is just to kind of, to take that humble pie, eat that humble pie and do a video of yourself and watch it back. And I know, never mind, forget that. Never mind. What else? Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about how you balance being a mother into your songwriting and your job?
Oh, that's great. Yes, I literally could talk an hour about that, but I'll give you a short version. So one of the things, husband's brain injury, and then probably 6 or 7 years later, I was still writing songs and doing all of that. We were praying about having kids, and that was probably about a 7 or 8 year process of, again, the Lord closing doors, adoption, the Lord closing doors. And so it was kind of interesting that all of a sudden, in the same kind of 3-month period, I wrote the song Blessings, really wasn't thinking much about it. The record label decided, hey, we're going to pitch this to radio. And I was like, okay, that's kind of weird, because all they're playing is punk music, punk rock music right now. I seriously doubt they're going to play a song with a little girl on the piano playing. But apparently they did. And so all of a sudden I had all these opportunities to go and sing places. And at the same time we found out we were pregnant with Josie. And so it was exciting, but it was also really confusing. But the thing that I remember kind of reflecting on was, God, you don't have your will for me as a mom, your will for me as a songwriter, your will for me as a Perimeter Church employee. You just have your will. And you're never going to call me to a ministry that is at the detriment of the mom that you called me to be. And I know that doesn't really answer the question, but just me beginning with the truth that if God's calling me to do both, then He's going to make it. I'm not going to have to sacrifice one over the other. One of the best things someone ever told me about ministry and family, they said, never sacrifice your family for the sake of ministry, but always expect for your family to make sacrifices for ministry. Okay? So never sacrifice your family for ministry, but always expect for your family to make sacrifices for ministry. And here's what that means. Your family is always your primary ministry. But if your family never sees you sacrifice anything for the sake of ministry, then they'll never understand that God is worthy of sacrifice. So what do my kids sacrifice? They sacrifice sleep on Sunday mornings. I get up where all our other friends are sleeping in. We're waking up at 6:15 on Sunday mornings, loading them in the car. But I think that that's actually the best thing for their formation. I think they need to see that serving the Lord does involve sacrifice. This year for spring break, all their friends are going to the beach. Do you know where we're going? The Ark. We're going to go do some concerts at the Ark. I mean, it's not exactly where I expected to be for spring break either. On the Ark. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, in Kentucky, there's a big old Ark. And that's where we're the most Christian family ever. Going to play the Ark. But that's what we're doing for spring break, because some people ask us to come. And anyway, so as long, I think that your family never understands really what the whole thing is about if they're never seeing the big sacrifices as a family. But yeah, I always have to hold that in balance as well. So real quick, Josie. So I had Josie, and then I think 2 months later went. 3 months later went out with. It was Mandisa was the first tour that I did after having Josie, and that was fantastic. Her and all of her black uncles. She just had it was the sweetest thing. I think that she thought we literally, I'm ready, and she's we get home and she sees all these white people, and she are my parents. Who are these people? Where are my people? So that was amazing. But anyway, we were with Mandisa, and then Stephen Curtis Chapman after that, and then Casting Crowns after that. And so the reason I tell you that, she had been to 48 states by the time she was 18 months old. But it was the sweetest thing in the world. I got to spend every day with my daughter. And then at about 7 o'clock, I'd go pop in my in-ears, go on stage for 25 minutes, sing a few songs while one of her honorary sound guy uncles was holding her. And it was I can't imagine anything different than that. And so the Lord, He makes it clear. He paves the way for us to be more than just singers and moms. Sorry, that was a long. Told you I could talk in an hour. I think I only went 50 minutes on that one. How about one more question? Then we got to get out of here. Oh, 2 more.
I'm a big fan of the Great God Who Saves album. I've listened to a lot of those songs each day. Do you have a personal favorite album of yours?
Nope. I have never listened to anything of mine after I did it, because it just is always so awkward. But man, that really encourages me. That was one of the ones I did with Ed Cash. Another one, maybe God in Every Story. That was a sweet one that a lot of songs about me learning how God still uses me in the midst of my brokenness, in the midst of our kind of open-ended situation. So, yeah, thanks for asking. What's your name?
I'm Brock.
Brock. Nice to meet you, Brock.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, over here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, whenever you feel a calling or a desire on your heart, whether it be a career or something else, how do you know that calling is from the Lord and not necessarily something for self-righteousness or trying to awaken a person?
That's so good. That's so good. I was part of a group, it's a group called Worship Circle. You know, Worship Circle, anyway, I'm one of kind of one of the coaches with them. And it's all different denominations. There was a guy sharing, and it was about listening and hearing the voice of Jesus. And it was a cool teaching. And basically he was kind of reminding people that so often we're like, Lord, I want to hear from you. If you could just say it in the next 30 seconds. Rather than coming before the Lord and really being silent. But anyway, so he's giving this teaching. And it's not that it was, wasn't that it was wrong, but I feel like it was a little incomplete in the sense that I came back and I was telling my little group, I said, yes, if this is listening to God, where it needs to start is reading His Word. That's how you can recognize His voice, with all the different voices in your head. For me, I begin my day with His Word, and it's not like if that's not what your routine is, that's okay. For me, I tell my kids, I was like, they'll come up to me before I've finished like my Bible and prayer time. I'm like, no. You can't handle mommy right now. Mommy needs for Jesus time. Like, this is not safe for you to come to me here. You need to go fill up my coffee for me. And yeah, anyway. But there's something about reading God's Word and then listening and then going back and reading His Word. So you are reading His Word, knowing His voice, knowing His will, knowing His commandments, and then saying, Lord, what can I do in this situation? And truly listening, and then whatever you kind of hear, going back and checking again with His Word. And I know that's it's not always that clear. I'll say this too. There's some times that, like I'll talk to people, they're like, oh, I'm struggling with this decision, and I'm seeking the Lord, I'm just, and I'll say to them, but what's really at stake there? Like maybe there's not as much at stake as we think. Like you're praying, should I do this? I've never thought about this. I was actually engaged before Martin. I had dated a guy. It was one of those guys that was like perfect on paper. And I was just praying, like, Lord, do you want us, is this the one? And he proposed to me. And I was like, whoa, this does not feel right. And I was like, but I'm just going to go for it anyway. And I said yes. And about 9 hours later, I was so, I can't even describe it any other way than I knew I had made the wrong decision. And so I feel like sometimes when you're seeking the Lord, sometimes it's okay, like you choose one. And then the Lord will either use that to bring you to something else, or He'll make it clear that was the wrong one. It's not that we as believers are promised we're always going to make perfect decisions. We're promised that the Lord, call to me, I'll answer you. Yeah, that was not the greatest answer. We're done here, aren't we? Thank you guys so very much.